Burt Lancaster, Clark Gable, and you go back, Tony Quinn, all those guys, they really, wonderful actors, Gary Cooper, who I just met once or twice, all those kind of guys never did the method or anything. They were pretty much themselves.
Yeah.
But they portrayed, if they were supposed to be sad, they acted sad. You know, it's like the joke, like you say, Clark Gable, you say, all right, roll him. And he says, you know, Steve, I'm fed up with you, and I'm going to kill you. And then you go, cut. And he goes, how about going to lunch? And it's the same guy, you know. Everybody says, what a great actor. That's what always knocked me out, you know.
That you did Beach Blanket Bingo, right? Which was, I think, the last of the beach movies with Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello.
In fact, that was such a hit that Barbara Bush, just recently, Barbara Bush, who I met when I was in the White House, and I was invited to a state dinner, which is another long story. My wife and I have never been to. Have you been to a state dinner?
No.
Well, don't make any plans.
I was actually invited to the White House once.
Were you really?
Yeah. You want to hear the story? Maybe you don't.
No, I got time.
I was invited to
it's 1:30 in the morning. Where are we going?
I was invited to the White House because Bush invited these baseball announcers. He invited Jack Buck and Tim McCarver, and I think Vin was invited, Scully, but he couldn't make it because the National League playoffs were opening in Chicago. It was in early October. And I was going to do the American League playoffs in Oakland, Toronto and the A's. And I felt that I couldn't give up the day before as preparation and then fly in overnight because it was the last series that NBC was going to do before we lost the baseball. So with regret, I had to pass up this chance to go to the White House, and basically Bush has been a broken man ever since.
That was a good one, Bob.
Thank you.
George, I never said it. The 38-year-old kid did it.
So anyway, you were at the state dinner.
Yeah, so I was at a state dinner, and it was the president of Tunisia. And I, being Jewish, that's one of my favorite countries. There was a lot of sheets and a lot of guys going, one guy had a sword, which I thought was out of line. He wanted to make me Jewish again. Oh, funny stuff. If only I was on a show that was on early. Blowing all this stuff with a 1:30 in the morning job. But I went to the White House for President of Tunisia, and Barbara Bush was great. And the seating, when they came for the seating, which is another story, by the fireplace was Barbara Bush, and the Marine Guard took me over and said, this is your seat. I said, no, it must be a mistake. This is Barbara Bush, and that seat is mine. He said, and all of a sudden the voice said, sit down. It was Barbara Bush. And I sat down next to her. We had the best time in the world, because we had this Arab gentleman sitting alongside of her, and he kept going, and she kept saying, don't worry about it. I got nervous. I figured maybe he saw my mezuzah. But no, it was a wonderful time, and we got to be friendly. Well, she knew me for the inaugural Ronald Reagan. Previous to this, I did the inaugural with Frank Sinatra, and the cabinet went into shock when they heard I was going to be on it, but it was great with Ronald Reagan. Anyway, so that's how I got to meet them originally. Now they're up in Camp David, and for some crazy reason, she saw Beach Blanket Bingo, Barbara Bush, and in her own handwriting wrote me a note. Said, Don, I saw one of the classics of all time, Beach Blanket Bingo.
Frankie and Dee Dee. Hi, Frankie. Hello, Dee Dee. Stand up and get sick for you. You two 43-year-old yo-yo skipping around the house. Grow up. You're a man already, Frank. How long can you stand in the bathroom in front of the mirror? Go, Zabba, Zabba, Zabba. You're 43, Frank. You're old and wrinkled. Did you ever hear yourself sing, Frank? You're scared trains. You sing, Frank, you sing. Be my luck. You're old. Let me hear you say one note. Say, wrong. You see what I mean? That's what I mean. This kid cannot sing. And I want you to know one other thing, Dee Dee. I never liked your personality. You know what I mean? You're too short for this type of work.
So she saw one of these shows. So I said, I can get you Beach Blanket Bingo. And she and my wife and I found a copy of Beach Blanket and sent it to the White House. And she wrote back, what a great classic. I am so moved. George and I just love it. As a joke, she was putting me on, naturally, you know. So we have that kind of conversation together, and she's been writing us ever since, and now I'm starting to rip up the letters because it's a little too much. You know, how many times can I keep telling George it's wonderful, you know.
But it's an interesting image. Colin Powell on the hotline, and Bush is in watching Beach Blanket Bingo.
Yeah, that is good. Can we go on?
If you sit at a state dinner with Ronald Reagan or George Bush, do they want to be insulted? Do they want you to do you for them?
No. I've never got, except at the inaugural for Ronald Reagan, and I think Ronald Reagan knew me when he was governor, and I ribbed him at many roasts at the Friars, and so he knew pretty much. I think George Bush has always been a wonderful man, but I don't think he wanted Don Rickles to stand up and say, I'm getting fed up, George. I mean, in fact, I was at a Bob Hope thing when he was running for president, and Bob Hope got up and said, Don, you'll come along, and at the end, you'll do a few minutes. Well, Bob Hope that night happened to go over. So he said, you don't have to get up. And I was all set. A little pus was coming out of her mouth. I was ready for the poison to really give the president some shots, the future president. And he said, you don't have to get up. And I said, I'll just say a few words. And George Bush leaned over and said, don't get up. You don't say nothing. They were so nervous that I was going to get up and say something wrong. Anyway, we became friends. And then I saw the president at as I said, at the dinner. And he was great. He walked by me and went, hello. And that was about it. Dan Quayle was the one that hung with me. He said, can we have a drink together? I said, don't beg, I hate that. So Dan Quayle and I walked around a little bit. But the president was very nice, and Barbara Bush. They were a wonderful couple, forgetting politics. They're both very down-to-earth people. He really is a sincere man. I don't know why I'm saying this. I'm not going to run for governor, I got my own troubles,
Back after this.
Oh, why?
What does it feel like, even after you've had some success, when you hit that night where, for whatever reason, it isn't working and you think you're dying on stage? Is there any way to describe the loneliness and the desperation that you feel?
Well, for me, I always kept going. It's the concentration. I always kept going like I was a hit. I used to say, they're wrong, I'm great. You know in your heart when you're not really making it. There's no question about that. But you'll never let an audience know. That's the kiss of death. And I think in my entire career, I never let an audience, even in everything is relative, even when I made $100 a week and struggling in joints, I never let an audience know that I was falling on my you-know-what. And I think that's good advice for any of us, in any business, that if you show them, hey, when the show was over, certainly I told my mother, rest her soul, because she was a great influence on me, and I told her all my stories, and then later on, my wife, Barbara, we would discuss, you know when you're not cutting, all of us know. But yeah, I always had the dignity for myself to never let the audience know that I was falling on my face.
You mentioned your mother several times, and when she was living, you often referred to her in your act. You'd come out and say to Carson, I was talking to my mother after the last time I was on, and this was her take on my last appearance. Why do you think your relationship with your mother was so close?
Well, I called her the Jewish Patton. That was my fun name with her. And she really wanted me to be a different kind of performer. I have no excuse about that. It's the truth. She wanted me to be, Alan King knows it. She said, why can't you be like Alan King? Or like you said, why do you have to insult people? Why couldn't you just come out and tell jokes? I said, Mom, I don't do that. But the great thing about her was that she was very supportive. I was a very terrified guy when I was a young man. I was uptight about a lot of things, and she really worked on me and made me believe in what I did, even though she didn't sometimes think that was so funny. But she really believed in me, and she was a strong woman. She wasn't the most perfect woman in the world, but for me, she did a lot. And I was almost like, well, my father died young, so I was almost like a second husband, if that makes sense, to her. I was everything to her. She lived her life through me, because she wanted to be an entertainer. And I think I performed, and she saw herself as me. And she wanted to be what I was. And doing so, she helped me to gain confidence.
Would you hear from her that her contemporaries had said, oh, I saw your boy Donnie, and I know he's successful and he's very funny, but he is mean. Why did he say that?
Oh, sure.
They wouldn't get it,
Oh, sure. She would get that, sure. And she would always defend me. And then she would say quietly, Rose was right. You didn't have to call that guy an old man. You didn't have to do that, And then I'd say, well, the check is here, right, Mom? And she'd say, I don't like that kind of humor. She did that, see, because her gums would lock. But she was something else. It's the last of a breed, and so... And the joke was I got lucky. I married a woman that said, now remember, I'm not your mother, that's my wife. She said, I'm not going to be your mother, I'm me. And she really has been herself in her own right. Because you got to realize when you're 38 years old and never married and tight and living in the same apartment.